Okay, you ready for the last part of lecture 16? The Economics of Sex video was made by a conservative think tank. They're called the Austin Institute for Family and Culture. It's intended to repress women sexually, and it relies on sexual economics theory to do so. In fact, if you download the resource guide at the videos link on YouTube, SCT papers are included. To date, the video has been viewed by over 1.5 million people with 4 times more likes than dislikes. Concerned that packaging SET in cutesy animation as proven science might be persuasive, my graduate student Janelle Federoff and I conducted a study at Rutgers. So what we did is we exposed 2/3 of our undergraduate sample to the video that you just watched, and then afterwards they either read a feminist blog that criticized the video or they didn't. They just watched the video. The control group didn't watch the video and they didn't read the blog, but everybody completed the same measures. For endorsing sexual exchange, we measured that in 2 ways, choosing those sexual exchange jewelry ads over control ads, just like before, and endorsing the tenets of SET that were described in the video. Sample items were no matter how accomplished a woman is, her chief value to men is her sex appeal. No matter how loving a man is, his chief value to women is his bank account. More women than men want to get married. Sex is a female resource that women should give only in exchange for men's financial support and emotional commitment. And effective birth control, like the pill, has made it harder for women to find good husbands. So what we found is that compared with controls, watching the video increased scores on both of these measures. So the video is good at selling SET, or at least the notion of sexual exchange. And that's a theory not supported by evidence. In addition, watching the video increased scores on the adversarial sexual belief scale, which measures agreement with statements like this. In sexual relationships, people are mostly out to take advantage of each other. Most people are pretty devious and manipulative when they're trying to attract someone of the opposite sex. Men and women are generally out to use each other. Sex is like a game where one person wins and the other loses, and men and women cannot really understand each other. So taken together, these findings demonstrate that exposure to the tenets of SET is not only persuasive, it's harmful for close relationships. And that's because it's a theory of sexual intimacy that completely ignores the power of love. However, participants who also read a feminist rebuttal of the video were mostly buffered from these effects. So what we used as the feminist blog was a piece by Lindy West called "Sex is Not an Economy and You Are Not Merchandise." And if you Google that title, you can read the whole thing, but we just used a piece of it. So here's what we presented to people. The longer I live and the deeper I fall in love, the more perspective I gain and the more certain I become that the people who most aggressively try to define love for others have never actually experienced it themselves. I don't mean that in some cornball way. I mean it in a what the hell are you people talking about way. My vagina is livestock. My boyfriend is a customer. I should charge men for my milk. Okay, Casanova. The Economics of Sex, a YouTube animation, is about how women are stupid and marriage rates are down because slutty scarlet women are giving up too much of their vagina supply, causing the wife demand to dwindle and babies to go extinct. Or, in simpler terms, marriage is good, birth control is bad, and everything's women's fault. The video is stunningly offensive, made even more so by the lengths it goes to appear unbiased, scientific, and hip. It never once mentions liking another human being. So this critique immunized both genders against the effects of the video, with one exception. Men exposed to the economics of sex video scored higher on adversarial sexual beliefs compared with control men, and it didn't matter whether or not they had read the feminist rebuttal. So while the feminist critique dampened the effects of the video on choosing sexual exchange ads over control ads, and also on agreement with the SET tenets that are described in the video, and it also buffered women's tendency to score higher on ASB if they'd seen the video also. But in this one sole case, guys still scored higher on ASB after watching that video compared with control men, and it didn't matter if they read the feminist critique or not. So in related research, I want to tell you about a study Zurbriggen and Morgan did. They found that consumers of reality TV shows that promote sexual exchange, such as Joe Millionaire, also reported stronger adversarial sexual beliefs. But that's correlational research, right? And therefore self-selection could explain the effect. Maybe people already high on adversarial sexual beliefs are attracted to that kind of entertainment. So in contrast, our study supports a causal link between exposure to sexual exchange and adversarial sexual beliefs. The implications is that exposure to SET antagonizes gender equality by increasing for support for patriarchal beliefs about what each gender brings to a relationship, women, their bodies, men, their bank accounts, and also endorsement of adversarial sexual beliefs, which are very harmful beliefs that correlate with lots of measures that can be thought of as oppressing women. For example, men who score high on ASB also show higher levels of rape myth acceptance, which includes the belief that sexually experienced women can't possibly be raped, or that women who are easy to bed are just asking to be raped. They also score higher on willingness to commit sexual aggression, and they score higher on hostile sexism. So anything that promotes such beliefs is costly for women, but it also harms close relationships for both genders. Remember, part of ASB is men and women can't trust each other, and we can never be friends. In summary, SET is a case of gender myth-making rooted in patriarchy, yet curiously blind to it. It's curiously blind to it because while Baumeister and Twang mention patriarchy, they dismiss it out of hand and say, no, we don't think patriarchy has anything to do with the cultural suppression of female sexuality. Instead, it's all about women suppressing other women for the sake of keeping the price of their sexual favors high. But why dismiss patriarchy out of hand? It's oppressed women for thousands of years. Thanks to the perfect storm, however, of the pill, the sexual revolution, and the women's movement, Western women have finally begun to gain economic and social control over their lives. Thanks to patriarchy, women were educated, at least since Ovid's time, to use sex like kryptonite for men by teaching them the art of using feminine wiles, right? Women's only power for a long time was to seduce men sexually. Today, women are keen to obtain resources directly through higher education and pursuing their own professional careers, as opposed to relying on men for financial provision. If you just observed women's behavior, you'd have to question why any social psychologist would invent a patriarchal theory like sexual economics theory. But, to be fair, when the media sexualizes women to sell all types of products, can we really blame people for viewing women's bodies as commodities? Can we even blame the authors of sexual economics theory? Yes, we can, because those authors are scientists who had access to scientific literatures on sexism and close relationships that should have given them pause. At the very least, Baumeister and Twenge should have tested sexual economics theory before Baumeister announced its victory as, quote, the only theory to predict that women are solely responsible for suppressing female sexuality, unquote. It is the only such theory, but that doesn't make it right. On the contrary, SET is wrong on almost every front. It's even wrong on the economics. Supply and demand principles, in order for those to be worth anything, they require standardized goods like lumber or oil. And sex is a highly variable human activity. It's one of the least standardized human activities that there is. And even if that wasn't the case, if sex was completely standardized for everyone, women can't operate like a cartel because cartels only work with a small number of sellers. You have to have a small number of sellers before anyone can control the price of a product. And women are half, or now more than half, of the world's population. Finally, female sexuality is globally policed more than male sexuality. That's an observation that SET got right. And despite my complaints about the theory, I'm grateful to its authors for providing such a flawed analysis. Why? Because it shows that social psychology needs more research probing the intersection of sex and sexism in order to uncover the myths that people, even social psychologists, believe. Thank you for your attention. Meanwhile, women will continue to refute SET with their life's choices as they continue to work toward advancing their cause, equal status with men, sexually, professionally, and politically.